You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Kraft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Kraft.
Hello, everyone. This is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast. And I have with me our guest today is Tom Ruwitch, right? Did I say it
Yes.
right? Yes, right. And Tom is a pretty remarkable guy. He's all about resilience and he has a business that he runs right now, and it's called Story Power Marketing. And he really has a couple of stories that he's going to share with us about shit happens. And then I
Uh-huh.
need to pick myself up and keep going. Thanks for joining me, Tom.
Gail, thank you. Really happy to be here.
It's going to be so much fun. So let's go. I love the dot-com era. I remember, was it Y2K was going on and all the
Yeah.
crazy and Y2K. Now you have all of these amazing engineers and programmers and developers with nothing much left to do, right? And so they went into this new thing called the internet, right?
Mhm.
And this dot-com business. It was something I totally didn't understand, right? And I know that I lost some friends from corporate into that venture. So, talk to me a little bit about the business that you started during that time and
Sure.
how it flourished, and then
Sure.
it didn't.
Yeah. So my background was in journalism. I'd been a newspaper reporter for a long time, and then I moved back to my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri, and went to work at the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and began to work on the internet side of the newspaper. Um, Online newspapers sort of came on the scene. Pardon me,
Hmm.
came on the scene in the mid 90s or so, and this was
Hmm.
1996 to 1999. And then another person and I from the Post Dispatch left and co-founded a company called Sports Huddle. And what we did is built software for media companies to collect and then publish both online and offline high school sports statistics. And we grew that company by raising money. We had venture capital investment, angel investment. We grew that company from the two of us, to 85 people in 18 months, starting in 1999. And we had clients around the country: New York Times, Dallas Morning News, Washington Post, San Francisco Chronicle, you name it. We had newspaper companies all over the country that were using our software, that were using it to create their high school sports online statistics. Those sections were getting outrageous amounts of traffic. Everything was online or in line. We were trending right where we wanted to be. We were about 18 months into it, and then the .com boom turned into the .bomb boom
I love it.
in
.com to
around
.bomb.
in the middle of about 2000. Early 2000 is when a lot of the bad companies began to fail. All the money that had been washing into the market began to recede out of the market, and bad companies and good, we were on track. We were keeping our promises to our investors. We had investors who were telling us that we were on track to hit our long-term goals much sooner than we thought. But we also were hearing from investors who were saying, yeah, nobody's doing investments right now. The market has just dried up, and we weren't to the point of profitability yet. So we had grown this company, and then we had to lay off a bunch of people. We had to sell the company. We had to move on, and it was devastating. And but I learned a lot from it. And about a year after that happened, I built another company. I started an email service provider company, a company that creates the software for building, sending, tracking email marketing campaigns. And this was in 2001, before most people had heard of email marketing, much less got involved with it. And so I had to build that company in a much different way. I partnered with a software firm that saw the promise of it. We didn't raise capital. We did it. We bootstrapped the business
Bootstrap.
without capital. And I ran that company for 19 years before selling it at the very end of 2019.
So before we hit into the latest business that you're in,
Sure.
let's backtrack a little bit. So here you are, you work for companies, then you
Mm-hmm.
go out on your own and your
Yeah.
first step into being an entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
and everything is looking rosy,
Yeah.
and then the bomb hits.
Yeah.
And people don't understand it's not that the dot coms were a problem. It's
Mm-hmm.
that so many of them came out so fast with just barely a clue as to what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And the money was pouring because it looked like this is it. The internet
Right.
is it. And it's true, it was.
Yep.
It was just a little premature, I think. And so the businesses that were like you were saying, on track. They had a good plan that were honoring the plan, honoring their investors, went down because the money dried up.
Yeah.
Fear. Anyone who so my minor is definitely in the money understanding money and where
Mm-hmm.
that flows, and it really consumer expectations is the biggest driver of market. It has nothing
Sure.
to do, right? It has nothing to do with what's going on in the stock market. It has nothing to do with reality. It's consumers expectations and investors expectations, and so they were expecting failure, they had seen failure, they were pulling out. And so it was a year and a half, you said, before you started your next business. What was going on in your mind, emotionally, physically, right? What were you thinking? What were
Yeah.
you feeling during that time?
Well, I initially I was bitter. I was frustrated. I felt like things beyond my control had led to this dream and this great ride we were on coming apart. Um, I wasn't initially sure what to do at first. I
Right.
felt like I had let down people who were working for me. I
Yeah.
had let down angel investors, including family members who had invested in the company. But then I said a moment ago, things beyond my control. As time passed, I began to recognize that there were forces beyond my control that were really the primary factors that
Mm-hmm.
contributed to this, and it really helped me develop a sense in my future business ventures of focusing on the things that I can control and not getting too hung up or hung up at all on those things that I can't control. And if you focus on what's right in front of you, what you can control, prioritize appropriately, and just keep your eye on the ball in that regard, you can succeed. And if you fail, then you failed doing the best that you could, controlling the things that you can control. So I
Yeah.
learned lessons from that. I developed a sense of perseverance and thick skin that I wouldn't have otherwise developed at all, as quickly, if at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it really helped me as I ran the next company called Marketable that I founded in 2001.
Well, what's interesting is so let's your business is now about storytelling, and
Mm-hmm.
what you learned right in 2000 was not to tell stories, right? Not to make up stories, but to
Yeah.
focus on what's really in front of you. So there's a little irony there, I'm just saying.
No, I like that. And when we talk about in my current work that I do with clients, we do a lot of mindset work where we talk about the fact that really when you are struggling with mindset, it's often about telling yourself stories that aren't true.
Right? Right.
imposter syndrome.
Oh my God.
I'm not a creative person. I don't have a good story to tell. All of these are stories that we tell ourselves. So indeed, you're right to put your finger on it. That when I fell out of the business, when Sports Huddle failed, I was telling myself a lot of stories,
Yeah.
pointing fingers outward, pointing fingers at myself, and and you're in a very emotional state when something like that happens. Pardon me.
Hmm.
You're in a very emotional state, and you have to step back from the emotional state, look at things rationally, and then draw the lessons that are useful and that are going to drive you forward
Right.
if you're going to rise out of the ashes of whatever burned you down.
Right. Becoming the
Yeah,
Phoenix is all about the lessons, right? And there's a gift in the lessons, right? And so the
absolutely.
yes, and so the gift, you put your big boy panties on and
Uh-huh.
you started or boxer shorts, whatever, and started another business, right?
Yep.
Um, and that business ended up being really quite successful, and it was ahead of its time.
It was. Yeah, I'm not going to suggest that I invented email marketing. I didn't, but I saw how email had enormous potential, and I drew that also from my previous experience. So I had come out of the media business
Right.
where so much revenue for newspapers was coming from classified advertising and display advertising. So the model, the idea of display advertising in a print publication is the advertiser buys space, quarter page, half page, full page, whatever it is. They have an expectation that so many thousands or hundreds of thousands of pairs of eyeballs are going to look at that ad, and they hope that that equation, so many eyeballs looking at my ad, will lead to business. Okay.
Right.
um,
Right.
it's not it's not a perfect media model. And in fact, if we think about how advertising developed on the internet, display advertising and banner advertising was the first thing that happened, and it's the thing that we were doing to monetize our websites. We were selling banner ads and so forth, and that revenue growth around banner ads was very, very slow.
Right.
What's happened since the late 90s is that people have recognized that the internet is an incredibly powerful medium for connecting buyers and sellers directly, and and allowing buyers and sellers to interact and converse in ways that you can't with the display advertising model. The display advertising model is more, here I am, dial this number or show up in my store or buy my product. But the internet is so much more powerful than that. And I recognize that in the early 2000s, late 90s, coming out of it, I was thinking, this display model kind of let us down at Sports Huddle. It didn't generate enough revenue quickly enough for us to get over the hump without more investors. Um, we predicted it. I mean, we sort of knew that that was going to be the revenue growth. We were on track, but it still was not ideal. And I began to experiment and play with the idea that, well, what about vendors, sellers connecting directly with buyers and building relationships with them and conversing with them? And email is a very, very powerful medium to do that. And for all of the people who have said over the years email marketing is dead, which I began to hear the minute after I started my business in 2001, there were people who were saying, you're nuts to do this. Email marketing will never work. And then when email marketing took hold, there were people, oh, now we have text messaging, email marketing is dead. Oh, now we have Facebook, email marketing is dead. No, email marketing remains a really powerful medium for connecting buyers and sellers. And yeah, I recognize that 22 years ago. and built a nice business around that idea.
Right. So first of all, I love the word that experiment.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, I am an empowerment master and I work with people on mindset, but beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I educate people on is that, like, don't take this life so freaking seriously.
Right on.
It's an experiment. If you were working in a lab and you put a few chemicals together and they blew up, would you walk away from the lab and never go again? No. You would look at your notes and figure out what you needed to tweak, and you would do the experiment again.
Yep.
So put your, again, big girl panties on, right?
Yeah.
And do it again. Don't give up on
Yeah.
yourself, right?
Yeah, and that goes back to the lessons learned
Right.
from that business failure. That I think it's Jim Rohn who talks about or talked about turning frustration into fascination. And
Right.
so something goes wrong, or you're dealing with a prospect or a client who is being a pain in the neck, or you lose a prospect or a client. And the reaction can often be initially deep frustration and emotion, and that only gets you stuck. But if you respond by saying, well, this is a fascinating thing. What
Right.
went wrong? Why did this
Or,
client and I not click?
right,
What
is
could
it time
I
for
have?
me to find a new client, a different client? Has
Yeah,
my business and model changed so much that I'm no longer in alignment with that client?
exactly.
Then
You
who
know,
is my client?
what can I do to change this? And if you approach these challenges, even failures, with a sense of fascination as opposed to frustration, you're always going to fail forward. And 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 that's something that I had to fail backwards
Mhm.
to discover.
Right, right. And so you sold your second business, and I want you to share with us why you got into this new business
Sure.
and then your timing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So 2001, email marketing business. Most people hadn't heard of email marketing. I need to give you the backstory before I
Right?
get up to the end of this business. We had lots and lots and lots of clients who would come to us and say, great, now we have the software to create, deliver, and track email campaigns. Where do we buy the list from? Are you going to sell us a list? We'd say, no, 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 you don't buy the list, you build the list. Build a list, what does that mean? And
Mm-hmm.
so we very quickly, when I built MarketVault, the email company in 2001, we very built quickly around the software as a service business, built an agency, helping our clients with lead generation, websites, landing page, follow-up sequences, doing campaigns for them, all of that kind of stuff. So we were very intimately involved with hundreds of businesses that were doing their email marketing campaigns. And what we noticed over 19 years of running email marketing campaigns for some of our clients, and then watching others try to run their own campaigns without our help, is that when things didn't go well, the clients were very quick to chase the shiny technology squirrel and say, "Oh, I need a better tool. I need a better marketing automation tool, or I want a better and fancier designed funnel. Give me a better funnel." Or they blame the tactician, blame the tool, blame the tactic, blame the tactician. And what very few businesses did then, and very few businesses still do today, is look at marketing struggles and say, well, maybe the message is the challenge. Maybe I'm not putting out the right content or the right story to captivate and connect with my audience. And so long before I sold MarketVault, the email company, in the agency that we built around the software, I was having conversations with my clients about how can you make your content more captivating? How can you stand out? How can you put messaging out there that's not the same old boring blah, blah, blah stuff that you feel frustrated creating. You get stuck. It's not fun. You don't think it works. So we were having that conversation 10 years ago or
Right.
more with a handful of our clients who wanted to listen. When we sold the software company, I spun out. Now, this is the end of 2019, the very beginning of 2020. I spun out the agency relationships that we maintained and kept those and rebranded as Story Power Marketing. And the promise of Story Power Marketing is that executive coaches, professional service providers, authors, anyone who packages their expertise for sale to serve clients, they hire us to power up their creative content and storytelling. Because, as I said, so many of them are dishing out the same old boring blah, blah, blah content. And then they get frustrated and feel stuck when their prospects and clients tune out and move on. So we teach them how to transform their content from boring to brilliant, from ignored to adored, turn the process from frustrating to fulfilling and fun, and ultimately transform the bottom line. Because if you can be the one who can stand out above all the sameness, which is getting more same because people are pressing buttons and asking AI robots to do it,
Right.
and and the mountain of sameness is just getting exponentially bigger at a
Thank you.
yes at a dramatic rate. So all the more reason today for you to focus on how can I get out there with a unique voice and be entertaining and captivating and stand out, because information is not enough. Information is a commodity, and the robots can dish out information way faster and at far higher volumes than you can. And if that's all you're doing, dishing out information, you're going to fall behind.
You're
So
going to
you have
disappear. Mm-hmm.
you're going to disappear. Yeah. And so we created Story Power Marketing right at the very, very beginning of 2020. You asked about timing. This little thing happened in late March 2020. The world shut down. So
Right.
um, it was I would call it an inconvenient time to have started a business, but at the same time, it proved to be a great blessing for me. Um, I think if I had not been through the challenges that we've already discussed today,
Yeah.
I might have recoiled, surrendered
Right.
when COVID hit.
Right.
But I was ready to face that challenge. And I realized, all right, what are the things that I can control?
Right.
I'm going to be meeting with fewer people. I have to master and adopt the whole online meeting Zoom thing. I have to change how I am putting myself out there in marketing. And this is a remarkable opportunity when this company is very, very young for me to spend more time than I probably otherwise would have without COVID, spend more time focusing on the business as opposed to working in the business. And we got through 2020 in great shape. We've been going ever since. And
And then you met me, right?
and then I
So
met you, and it's been
it's
zoom,
been
zoom, zoom
amazing.
ever
Zoom,
since.
zoom, zoom.
Yeah.
So telling your story. So I just wrote down being authentic and telling your story.
Yeah.
I remember when I started doing the types of coaching that I do, and it's unique. I'm not a typical coach.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember my marketing coach, because I had a marketing coach, a network marketing coach. I had lots of people teaching me to do this thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what happened is I was doing their thing,
Right.
right? And it was frustrating. It
Yep.
wasn't bringing me the clients I wanted to bring. It was
Mm-hmm.
really, and I would go home, go, I don't understand why, until I failed and went, well, thank you everyone for your input. Bye. I need to
Mm-hmm.
figure out who I am.
Right.
Right. And I met this woman who is a genius PR marketing woman, a genius. I mean, I'll tell you about her after we're done. Um, and she looked at me and she said, Gail, just show up as you, what you have to offer, people will just come because it's you.
Yeah.
Stop doing that.
Yep.
Right. And then I had to go home and go, well, who the hell am I?
Yeah.
What does that mean? Right.
Yeah.
Show up as you. Right. And since then, my focus on being authentic and honestly who I am in all aspects has served me greatly.
Yeah.
Right.
I love that you said that and that you shared that story, because I run into this all of all the time. So professional service providers, financial planners, attorneys, tax resolution people, so forth. They will, when I am preaching, put some personality in your content, have some fun, lighten up. They will say, well, I'm a professional. I'm not an entertainer. I don't want to be an entertainer. And then I'll point out to ones whom I know, well, wait a minute, when I sit down in your office, or when you describe to me what's going on when you meet with a client, you're talking for several minutes before you ever get down to nuts and bolts and law and stock reports and so forth. You're talking about the family, you're sharing stories, you're telling jokes, you're being a human being. And that's
Right.
half the reason that they want to be with you. That's half
Right.
the reason that they choose you and stick with you. And yet, when you send out marketing pieces, you want to be, I'm the very serious marketer who knows very serious information that's very serious for you to know. No, be you, just as you said, Gail. And
Right.
and this gets us back to the robots, right?
Right.
what what so many, the great mistake that millions of people are making right this moment is they're saying, oh my goodness, I could press a button and say, hey robot, write me a blog post about how to delegate better. I'm a coach and I help my clients delegate, and write me a post about delegation. And they'll write a post about delegation in 12 seconds, and then you'll read it and you'll think, oh, this sounds a little robotic. And you can tell the robot, oh, make it a little, give it a little more personality, and it will, make it a little funnier. And then you think, all right, I did it. I created some copy that has some personality, that has the important information. I've checked all the boxes. And then you send it out, and then you have a meeting with the prospect, and the person who you are sitting there across the Zoom room or across a table from somebody, and now you're being you, and you bear no resemblance to whoever, the robot that sent out that stuff.
Right. And that's what was happening. And I'll be I will be perfectly candid. So one of the things that I did was I joined a BNI group, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what do they want? They want a business coach. I'm not a business coach. I have been,
Mm-hmm.
process improvement was how my claim to fame in corporate. I was
Right.
amazing, right? I want to do that. It's no. That's why I got out of corporate,
Yeah.
right? I could do it with my eyes shut, but that's where I was pushed to, and that's what I was doing, and I hated it. So I had this conversation with myself with, well, if I am my own boss, why do I hate what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
This is not right. I should be doing what I love doing.
Right.
Life should be, and I use this word, this is my word, should be delicious,
Yeah. I
right?
love it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's when, the whole authenticity thing came into place. And quite frankly, Tom, I get woo. I'm now writing for this online newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've decided to name my article, wowing woo.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right. Because I was told not to be woo.
Ah,
Right? That's who I am. I'm going to
right.
talk to you about the Akashic records. I'm going to talk to you about the sixth, the seventh, the eighth dimension. I'm going
Yeah.
to tell you about the construct of the universe and how that affects you right now and how you can tap into that.
Yeah. And here's the thing, Gail, when somebody says to you, don't give me that stuff,
They're not my client.
They're not your prospect. They're not your client. And so if you say, if you buy that advice and say, oh, I guess I'm not going to talk about these things because somebody has said that's not any good, all you're doing is not being you, is letting people in who find you safe. And then when it comes time for you to go to work and help them, and you start talking about the things that you actually talk about, they're going to be like, what the heck? And
Right?
they're going to be out of there.
Right?
And so, good marketing and being authentic is as much about attracting prospects as it is disqualifying suspects. And
Right,
so,
exactly.
yeah, don't be afraid to be you, because you want people to choose you, not some
Some avatar.
caricature
Yeah.
or template of what some marketing coach tells you is good. And I talked about it in the context of robots, but the same thing goes for templated emails and templated funnels. So many marketers out there pitching, hey, here's the template, here's the emails that I sell that have worked really, really well, just fill in the blanks, change it for your name, your business, your target market, and this thing will work gangbusters.
Yeah, no, well, yeah.
Maybe, but
Yeah.
are you going to get the right clients? Are they going to know, like, and trust you? Are you really going to have lifetime relationships with them? The
Right.
greatest compliment that I get from people who are on my email list is every time I get an email from you, Tom, I know it's an email from Tom without even seeing your name on it. When I read your stuff, I know it's you. And
Right.
that's what you should all be aiming for, letting you be you, so much so that the people who engage with you feel like they're in a relationship with you, and that they're connected with you, because that's what you want when you're doing work with them, whether you're a financial advisor or a woo coach or whatever the case, whatever the case may be. Yeah.
And that's what marketing is all about. So
Yeah.
go back to, back in the 50s and the 60s when commercials on TV were first, right? And they were
Mm-hmm.
marketing to children,
Mm-hmm.
right? They were tapping into what's going to make this child go to mommy and daddy and say, I have to have that toy. It's
Right.
going to be the color. It's going to be, what it incites. It's going to be the imagination that it creates. It's going to be all of these things. And then how do I put that in the cereal box so you buy that cereal?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And they figured it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
And an important lesson from that story that you just told is that the best marketing and best advertising is all about understanding the prospect. What's the journey that they're on? What are their
Right.
needs? What is it
Right.
that drives them? It's too many marketers, too many advertisers are all me, me, me. Here are my credentials. Here's what I do. Here are the awards I've gotten. Here's the name of the TED talk I gave, without any acknowledgement of the journey that your
Right.
prospects are on.
So
And
I've taken all of my credentials off
yeah,
the internet. Like, who gives a frig?
yeah,
Quite frankly, because I know plenty of people who probably have the same credentials that I wouldn't send my dog to,
yeah. Well,
right?
and yeah, and here's where I would say credentials, I personally don't take all the credentials off, but I'll share with you a framework that I teach to really put this in perspective. It's called the wheel framework,
Mm-hmm.
WHEEL. And think about these things I'm about to lay out as a good way to structure a website, an
Mm-hmm.
about us page, a brochure, good
This
way
is
to sort
gold,
of
folks. Mark it
this.
down.
Yeah, take out your pencil, take some notes, turn on your recorder, whatever it may be. So W, why is the prospect buying? That's the first question your marketing needs to answer, and that is the heart of the story. The stories you tell are not your legendary origin story about the ditch you climbed out of or the garage where you invented the widget. The stories that you're telling are going to be relevant and reflect back on the journeys the prospects want to take, from frustration to relief, from fear to confidence, from stuck to unstuck, whatever the journey may be. Why is it that they're going to buy? Because they want to take that journey. Okay, then how do you deliver? And that's really where you're describing your product and service. So when I talk about what I'm doing, I talk about helping prospects, helping my clients move from frustrated to relieved, from prospects tuning out to prospects turning on, by teaching them how to transform their content from boring to brilliant. Why they buy? They want to make that journey, have more prospects, have people tuning into their content. How that happens? By learning how to power up their content with stories and creative content. What makes me different? Okay. This is where you start talking about, or this is where you start talking about your competitive edge. That's the third E. Why, how, edge. What's my competitive edge? Well, among the competitive edges that I bring to the table, I keep it much simpler than some of these other storytelling coaches who want you to master 10-step formulas or remember all of the elements of the hero's journey or treat every blog post you write as if you're building a little mini screenplay. I keep it simple. So that's one of many edges. Nobody cares about the fact that I keep it simple until they're leaning in because I've told them why and I've told them how.
Right.
So why, how, edge. And then the fourth E is evidence. What evidence is there that you do what you say you do? Okay. And this is where when you tell stories, you're really tapping into that emotional side of the brain, the right side of the brain. You're getting people excited. You're talking about emotional journeys, right? From fear to relief, or whatever the case may be. And there's that old adage that people buy on emotion. I don't think that's quite right. I think people lean in when they're emotionally turned on. But then the left brain says, well, wait a minute, hold on. I'm not grabbing my wallet until,
right. There's some analysis.
Yeah, I need to check some boxes here. And
right.
this is
because
when
that side of your brain has to be okay that you decided to say yes.
Right. The emotional side of the brain gets you to the table, gets you leaning in, gets you saying, tell me more, tell me more. I want this, I want this, I want this. But then the left side of the brain wants to check some boxes and says, well, what makes you different? What's your edge? And then they really want to see evidence. And this is where the credentials come in. Oh, you're certified. Oh, you've given a TED talk. Oh, your client count, you've served 5 billion burgers. That's important. Okay. Now I trust it. And then the L is lighten the load. And by lighten the load, what I mean is sometimes people are right there ready to buy, but they're hesitant. Maybe I'm just not sure. Well, that's where a guarantee comes in, or a try before you buy, or something like that. So W, Y, H, how, E, what's your edge? Second E, what's the evidence? And L, how can you lighten the load? And so all of that adds up to, you get somebody leaning in, get somebody fired up, you provide the evidence, and they're more likely to turn on. And at the top of that W, why are they going to buy? That's where stories are so important. Because
absolutely. Yes.
if you lead with a story, they get it. They understand why are we even having this conversation? Why should I care?
And Tom, the story does not have to be your own. Like I said earlier, I have so many of my own that I can feed in. But sometimes I'm telling the story of a client.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes I'm telling the story of, one of my favorites is early on. Like I said, I was a business coach, right? I was pushed into this. And so I have this gentleman and we're going to do a 5-year plan. I have the map up and all the things that we're going to do. And the first thing I say to him, I said, so tell me about your business. And he says, my business is getting me down, with his head down and he's backing up.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I'm like, well, why am I going to do a 5-year plan with someone who doesn't even like what they do?
Mhm.
Right. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, okay, this is where, like, take that down. And this is where the woo comes out.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Why are you even in this business? What's going on with you? What are you trying to achieve? What's your history as a child that made you think that you had to do this thing? Right? We went through all of that and we completely changed the trajectory of his
Yeah.
life.
I love it.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. And you're 100% right. There are so many places that stories can come from. The important thing is you start by understanding what makes your prospects tick and what tips and ideas and lessons are going to resonate to help enable the journey that they want to take. And
Right.
then those lessons can come from anywhere. They can come from a slice of life story that you experienced. They can come from some scene in a movie that you saw. They can come from some thing in a book or something directly that happened to a client. I'll share. I mentioned delegation a moment ago. I'll share a quick story about delegation because it really brings home this distinction between more of the same information only, blah 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 content versus story powered content. It
Right.
it An executive coach with whom I work, she had written a blog post before I began working with her. And her work is to help business owners and high level executives get off the hamster wheel and enjoy life more, and so on and so forth. And she had written a blog post about delegation, which is a really important skill for business leaders and business owners to master. And the blog post went something like this: delegation is one of the most important business skills for any business owner or leader to master. the When you delegate properly, your business can run smoothly, and blah blah blah. When you delegate improperly, da 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 da, here are 5 tips. Boring. And oh, by the way, if I ask ChatGPT or some other AI copywriting robot to write me a blog post explaining why delegation is important and offering 5 tips, I'd have a blog post in 12 seconds that would be as good, if not better. Okay. So what I did is I sat down with her and I said, well, talk to me about some of the work you've done. Think about, give me a client story of somebody who learned to delegate with you, or give me some experience of how you broke through and came to understand delegation. Let's just find some stories here. And one of the stories that she came up with was a true story about a business owner who had run this business for 20 years and had never been on a vacation longer than a long weekend. Friday through Tuesday was the longest vacation this guy had taken in 20 years. And why was that? Because he had the whole weight of the company on his shoulders. If he left, he was stressed and freaking out. If he left, he would get phone calls while on vacation from people. What do I do, boss? And he couldn't leave because he was the linchpin of the whole operation. She taught him how to delegate. He was able to go on a vacation, a 2-week vacation, had a ball. When he returned, the place was running better than it ever did. Morale was high. People were fired up, the whole thing. And so the subject line started as an email and then went to her blog. The subject line for this story was how a stressed out owner let go and got away. And the photo that went with the email was a guy on a hammock on a beach in a sunset and so forth, which is exactly what this guy did. He went on a beach vacation. So let's take that subject line: how a stressed out owner before let go and
The action.
got
Yeah.
away after. There are
Right.
3 parts of great stories. 3 parts.
Right.
Part one: empathize. Understand where the prospect, where your client is:
Hmm.
stressed out, stuck,
The pain.
never, weight of the world on his shoulders. Envision. Second E, envision. Get away, free, hammock on a beach.
Hmm.
Okay. 30, enable. Okay. Remember that wheel structure?
Right.
Why and how? Why and how? The why is empathize, envision, the story. Why do they hire you? Because they want to escape where they
want the
are,
hammock. They want
and
the hammock.
they want to get to where they want to get to where you envision. And what's the H? How? It's how you enable that journey to happen. That's the story. And that story is told in a tiny subject line. How a stressed out owner before got away, after. How? By learning to let go.
Right.
Enable. Powerful. And
give me a call and I'll show you how.
If you are a prospect, if you are somebody she wants to work with, and you see that, first thing you're going to do is say, yeah, I am kind of feeling stressed out. Next thing you're going to see is, yeah, I kind of would like to let go and get away. And you're going to read that.
Oh,
you're going to
absolutely.
read the story. And then when it gets the tips, oh, okay, learning to delegate, call to action at the bottom, call to schedule. It's exactly what happens. And if you just dish out the same old boring lectures, blah, 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 the same things that robots are kicking out now at warp speed, why is anybody going to read it? Why are they going to choose you over all of the other needles in that haystack of sameness? They're not going to find you. But if you
they're not going to. Yeah, they're looking for the human. And what's interesting that the robots are playing such a role right now is we are at a time where the human connection is at a premium. People desire that connection, right? It took us, not me, but it took people a long time to feel that connection over Zoom. I can remember, networking meetings I used to be in person going, well, this isn't working. We have to be in person. I'm like, no, you don't. Well, I'm not feeling that energy. I'm like, I feel it. What do you mean you don't feel the energy? Right? You're blocking it. This is a mindset thing because there's just as much energy here, but that human connection. And so when you choose same old, and you choose not to share your story, then you are depriving your potential prospect of that human connection.
Amen. Yep. 100%.
Oh my God, Tom, I could go on and on forever, but we need to cut this short. So if people want to get in touch with you and hear more and maybe even work with you, Tom, how would they do that?
Well, the best place to start is by going to my website, Story Power Marketing, all one word, no hyphens, just all mushed together, storypowermarketing.com. And when you go to the website, a little pop-up, it's going to show up with an invitation to join my email list. And I practice what I preach. I share stories that are informative and entertaining, that are all me, that are human, that are funny, all of that. And I encourage you to join the email list because it's just a great taste of story power marketing. Then there are some free resources on the site, videos, downloads, that sort of thing. And if you're interested in learning more, there are going to be a lot of opportunities that you'll see in the emails of how you can connect. And we have a great coaching program called the Content Transformation Academy and various opportunities. But start with the email list and the free resources, and we can go from there. I'm also on LinkedIn. My last name spelled Ruwitch. So look up Tom Ruwitch on LinkedIn. I'm the only one you'll find if you spell it right, and I'll be happy to connect with you. And when you reach out, please tell me you heard about me on Gail's podcast.
Absolutely. Otherwise, he won't let you in. He'll think you're trying to sell
I'll
something.
let you in. I just won't like you as much.
I actually don't, unless you tell me how you heard from me. So again, thank you again, Tom, and everybody. Thank you for listening. This is Gail Craft from the Empowering Process podcast. If there was something in here that kind of interested you, or if you have a question, please do put it in the comments, and Tom and I would be happy to get back to you. If this is something that someone could gain information from and maybe benefit from, do share it out. And as always, please, please, please like us, do subscribe so you know when there are more episodes coming up. Gail Craft from the Empowering Process podcast. Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailcraft.com to to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.